NFL free agency is here. How will the movement shape the NFL draft? Tonight on the Football Guys College Football Show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. We're happy to bring you a new show tonight. We're going to be talking a little bit about free agency, how it's impacting the draft coming up, and some rookie landing spots. Like free agency always does, it dries up landing spots, and it kind of screws over where we want our favorite players to go from the draft. And so this is kind of the reality check that we need. Make sure you hit that like button, hit subscribe, leave a comment while we're going, and get into the comments. We're here to we'll talk to you guys here about some football. I'd be remiss not to mention that Rookie Guide 2.0 is out. Go to footballguys.com. We have it out there. Added all of the RAS scores, relative athletic scores, kind of updated comps depending on how they tested. And we're really diving into that. Added players. We added a bunch of players. I don't know how many more players we added, but we had a lot of players. And I believe as long as you sign up for Football Guys, it's free, right, Jeff?
That's correct. Yeah, we are over 130 players. We have all the testing from the combine included, and this version is still free. You can still get the free rookie guide. Again, 130 profiles. We have our rankings in there. We have big boards in there. We have positional rankings, everything that you might need for your rookie draft. We've updated all of that from the initial release of 1.0 in early February. We're current with where our minds are right now with what we are hearing. And this will be the last opportunity to get the guide for free, because once version 3.0 will come out after the NFL draft, and we will have landing spot information. We will have everything that you need to know once we know where these players are, and that will be behind a subscription tier. So if you want to grab a free copy, please do so and put your information in and provide that to us here at Football Guys. And we promise not to spam you anything. It will just be the best newsletter in the industry. That's what you'll be signing up to get, but you'll also get that football guide. But moving forward again, version 3.0 is in the works, in the pipeline, and we will have that to you ready right after the draft.
Yep, we started working on version 3.0 as soon as 2.0 was done. So we're diving into it. But let's get into free agency. Let's talk about it. Carolina made a big move this last week. They're on the clock, and presumably for a quarterback. I would hope so. Okay, and so that's kind of where they're going. But Carolina's made some weird moves, right? So we're looking at what they've done so far in free agency. Miles Sanders, Hayden Hurst is out there. They got them. I think Miles Sanders was a 4-year deal. It just came out today, right before the show, but I think it was 4-year. I don't know what the money is. And it looks like it's going to be that. What is their plan, Christian? You just did a mock. You came out and talked about it out there. So what do you think? You had him moving up, so you had that first. We got to give Christian props, because if we don't give him a lot of props in the show, he gets very angry. So Christian got props for moving up to the 101. Where do you think they're going?
Yeah, so in the mock draft 1.0, which is on footballguys.com, you can still check that out. It's a little dated now after free agency. Of course, all mock drafts are, but you should still check that out. I had them take Anthony Richardson. We were fresh off the NFL Combine. I think that there's still a world in which that is the pick. There are some rumors flying around that Frank Reich is enamored by Anthony Richardson and what he could potentially do with him. On the other side of things, it's really risky to go up and get a guy that already has a lot of risk while giving up all of these assets that you had to give up to go up and get that guy. So a safer pick, a la CJ Stroud, makes a little bit more sense. And I think that's why CJ Stroud is the favorite to go first overall now. I personally would take CJ Stroud. I understand if you're Carolina, you're going up, you're taking a swing, and you want to hit a home run. There's a solid chance that CJ Stroud is a double or a triple, and there's a greater than zero chance that Anthony Richardson is a grand slam type of pick. And so I do think it's between those two quarterbacks. I think we haven't heard too much Bryce Young discussion since then. It's interesting, though, because they chose to move up to 1 instead of 3, and we've all kind of assumed that the Texans are going to go with Bryce at 2. So did they feel the need to go up to 1 to get Bryce? I'm not sure. I don't think that matters much. I think what Carolina is doing is just making sure they control who they are able to get, and they don't have to sit and hope as two teams potentially take quarterbacks ahead of them. So I don't know. This has been an interesting free agency for them. They've really put some pieces around where this rookie quarterback is set up to succeed. Their whole offensive line is back. They signed Bradley Bozeman back to be their starting center. And then, like you said, Miles Sanders and Hayden Hurst, you add a receiver, and this is looking like a fine group of, weapons around this rookie quarterback. So I'm intrigued.
And Andy Dalton. So I would be remiss not to
Oh,
point
yeah.
out they brought in Andy. So like that's kind of that bridge guy. Like I see that's why I think this pick also is interesting because maybe they think Andy could be that guy that kind of helps like an Anthony Richardson develop, right? Like, hey, maybe we could just throw Andy out there. What do you think, Jeff?
So there was a story right after they traded up, kind of the next day even, that they would explore trading back. And I think that was taken wildly out of context because I think that under that scenario, they would be looking at it and saying, well, we have two quarterbacks that we value equally, or even three quarterbacks that we value equally. Can we take a step back, recoup some of what we gave up, still end up with a guy that we absolutely love? And I think that was the takeaway there. I've seen some questions about, our guy, Dave Kluge. We love Dave Kluge on the show and we give him some love. He's on firing up Twitter right now, and he doesn't understand what the Panthers are doing. And the Panthers are adding capable players around a rookie quarterback to support a rookie quarterback. Hayden Hurst is a starting NFL tight end. Miles Sanders is a starting NFL running back. And we have entered kind of the collective hive mind has decided that any deal for a running back is a bad deal. Any outlay at all for a running back is a bad idea. And I think that's people, again, are just losing sight of all context and giving somebody like Ezekiel Elliott towards the twilight of his career a 6-year massive major contract that affects your cap. That's bad business. But having an actual starting NFL running back and starting NFL players is not bad business. And if you're a team like Chicago, if you're a team like Carolina with a young core with cap space and the ability to add talent, having actual starters goes a long way in the NFL. And that's not bad business to quote unquote pay a running back on the second contract if he still has a lot in him. I think Miles Sanders does still have a lot in him. And I think that's something that people need to realize and understand is, again, it's like you hear these things and people don't understand the full context and they take it to the extreme. Having capable NFL players is a major upgrade if other options were Chuba Hubbard and whatever it might be. And I think that's what Miles Sanders. Now, when I look at Miles Sanders as a player, I think he fits a lot better with Anthony Richardson as a quarterback because I have questions about him as a receiver out of the backfield. I have questions about him, kind of his natural instincts as a running back. He's more of a player that works great off RPO. If the quarterback has a run pass option and Miles Sanders has that schemed up hole that he's able to hit and be out the backside, that's a great fit for him. If he needs to run in a more sophisticated rushing system, pick his lanes, those types of things, I don't know that he's got that skill set in him. And so when I look at adding him there, he seems like an Anthony Richardson piece over a CJ Stroud piece. Again, we're early in the process. Other things can be moving. But I think the other team, too, that I want to talk about next is potentially an Anthony Richardson team as well. Or I guess they're further down the list, not next, but we'll get to that point.
Jeff, you almost got us in trouble.
we almost got canceled because Jeff can't read the show sheet. No, I think, yeah, I think you guys make good points. I don't want to this is not subtweeting. It's on a podcast. I think that I know what they're doing. I think they're doing what they should be kind of doing. Like, I don't think I think they're getting guys around them and I think they're building the right way. It's not just gonna be a complete tank job and they're going to protect the quarterback. Right. Like, I think that's pretty good. I do want to bring up too, like this kind of eliminates them from getting a running back. They've been kind of that sneaky, like, hey, maybe they get like a Zach Evans in the fourth or like that like guy in the fourth or fifth. And they have that Dameon Pierce, like volume. Hey, he's going to get volume. So it's kind of a sneaky area. I think we can kind of just slam the door on that, right?
Report So there was a report right after the Miles Sanders signing that this ruled out Deontay Foreman's return. And then there was a conflicting report that said, oh, no, they're still considering bringing back Foreman. And so Miles Sanders, his best film is when he was in the middle of a committee. Now, he was the lead back in that committee, but I don't think you want to rely on Chuba Hubbard to really be a part, like a main cog in that committee. I think you're looking at maybe adding another guy that could eat up, especially short yardage stuff. Miles Sanders isn't the best short yardage back in the world. Foreman's definitely that, but I could also see them going, maybe not Zach Evans now. Maybe it's more like a Dwayne McBride or just a bigger running back. Tavion Thomas as an undrafted free agent could, make the team or something like that. So I don't know. And just quickly, to be fair to Dave, I mean, as a new Bears fan, We didn't get to see them put pieces around a young quarterback. And so I think it is a foreign concept to a lot of people, but I agree with you guys. I think it makes sense to set this kid up to succeed early, especially with how open the NFC South is right now.
I do want to make one quick point on backfields. Is we've come to know committee backfields as an early down running back and a passing down running back, and in our mind, it's two that work in tandem. But we know that this is a copycat league in the NFL, and when you look at the Eagles' success, the Eagles were riding Miles Sanders, they were getting Boston Scott involved, and they had Kenny Gainwell as well, and they really had Jalen Hurts as another rushing threat as well. And when you look at the Chiefs before Clyde Edwards-Helaire got hurt, they had Isaiah Pacheco, they had Jerick McKinnon, and they had Clyde Edwards-Helaire getting some work as well. So I think traditionally we've come to expect a dual-headed, a thunder lightning, an early down pass catching back. But I think what you're seeing now is NFL teams are saying, hey, we're really going to have 3 running backs on our roster. Let's find ways to have guys that we could use in different roles, all 3 of those guys, instead of having just that one random guy that maybe is a special teamer, a break in case of emergency. Let's use the assets that we have on our roster and let's put them into very specific roles. And I think that the depth of this running back class that you see coming in, the depth of the free agency, they're playing hand in hand right now. Running back free agency is not moving too much. We got a little bit of movement today, but it's lagged behind because there's so many great running backs coming in that's driving the value down. Teams are also going to that approach of having 3 running backs within a committee instead of just the 2. That also drives the positional value down. And I think that we're starting in fantasy football to grasp your mind around it, but really you look at some backfields and everybody thinks that Detroit settled with adding David Montgomery and DeAndre Swift, but Detroit was one of those teams that were running 3 running backs at times last year, and so they could add a short yardage back as well. And so I think that you need to start to wrap your mind around committees as we have come to know them. It's a thing of the past, and what's going to be a thing of the future is using all 3 of the guys that you have on your roster, because you're going to have the talent and depth in those positions, rotating them through for very, very specific situations. And it's just going to be murderous on fantasy.
So when can we go back to that talk to having a bell cow is actually going to be the new dominant way to win leagues then?
Well, I mean, maybe that's the topic on once we get to Chicago.
Yeah, I think it could be. So let's go to Chicago. Chicago moved back. And we see that in terms of like, hey, they got rid of Monty. Monty, we're going to have a conversation at some point. I hate you. So you went to Detroit and you ruined everything with Swift. And then my co-host subtweeting me all night. But then you have that. So is Bijan in play at 9? Like would Chicago take Robinson? I know there's some talk about this and where they're at. Top 10 pick. They needed some help. I think they still need to add offensive line help. Christian would know better than me there, but I really feel like they do need to improve that still. So depending on who's there, but Christian, is there any chance they take Bijan there?
I wouldn't say there's a 0% chance. I think there's definitely a chance that Bijan's there. One thing we learned from Ryan Poles' first draft last year, which was still heavily influenced by the owners. He was still coming into his own. He didn't get to make every single call last year. There are reports that they asked Justin Fields which wide receiver he wanted, and then they picked Velus Jones. Maybe don't let Justin Fields pick your receivers this year. But in that sense, he doesn't lean heavily into analytics or analytical thinking. Now, a lot of that, Ian Cunningham comes from Philadelphia. They don't necessarily value running backs in the top 10 in the first round at all, but especially in the top 10. This is a little different. The Bears are building a team in a different way. They went out and they paid 2 linebackers, which is a non-traditional way of building a team. I don't think you can rule out them putting Bijan in a backfield with Justin Fields and Khalil Herbert and saying, we have probably the best backfield in terms of quarterback running back duo in the NFL. That is our advantage. That's what we're going to lean into. Oh, also we have some receivers when that's not working out for us. So while I do still think that they go defense, edge rusher, maybe offensive tackle, I think a lot of Bears fans would prefer an offensive tackle here, but there's still time. They could still sign those positions. And if we start to see that happen, that's when I think Bijan Robinson is very much so in play at pick 9.
What do you think, Jeff?
Well, in order for it to be Khalil Herbert season, like half Twitter believes, the Bears would have to commit to having the worst running back rotation in the NFL. So I'm just going to say that right now. So if you're somebody that has been pumping by Khalil Herbert, the Bears would have to actually commit to being the worst running back rotation in the NFL for him to be significantly matter, because we've seen he's not going to have a passing down role. And so if you're going to bring another major body in there, and I think that as you get through free agency, now there are a handful of veteran names out there that Austin Eckler obviously was a name that came up this week. Derrick Henry's been floated around. Dalvin Cook's names come up a lot this week. We're not seeing the Vikings, and we're not seeing Cincinnati get too involved with Joe Mixon potentially as a cap casualty as well in talks with free agency. I know Cincinnati was down the road a little bit with Jamal Williams, one of the finalists there, looking for other options. So there could be a big name that could still shake out. We saw Ezekiel Elliott shake free today. And so they could look in that direction. And really, when you look at with Justin Fields and why I'm pushing against having Khalil Herbert as the top back, I like Khalil Herbert. I think Khalil Herbert has a lot of talent, and I would like to see what he can do. At the same time, adding a veteran in there, or adding a proven player in there, or adding a player of Bijan Robinson's caliber in that backfield with Justin Fields gives you that second set of eyes that can pick up blitzes, those types of things for an experienced back in there, or a pass catcher like Bijan Robinson, that, somebody that can pick up those blitzes, or somebody that has those polished skills. I was in talks with somebody today, and they said, well, I don't think Fields would check down to a running back. And it wouldn't be check downs if you have a guy like Austin Eckler or a guy like Bijan Robinson. It would be schemed actions involving the running back in the passing game, creative, easy passes for Justin Fields. And I think that the move to bring in DJ Moore and the move to bring in that type of player allow easy actions for Justin Fields and allow him to build his confidence as a passer. That allows you to work those things, brings the defense up. That allows you, either Justin Fields to break a run and be in an open defense, or to attack vertically in easier pockets than he's seen in the past. Because what was able to happen last year is, as much as they ran the ball, they would suck people inside. Justin Fields would be able to get outside and create outside, but down the field, defenses were still able to sit back in a little bit of a shell because there was nothing threatening the short and intermediate passing areas, and so they didn't have to come up to attack those areas. So as you create weapons and add weapons in there, you build his confidence, but it changes the geometry of the field, and it changes what he's looking at downfield, and that can go a long way toward developing him and adding that skill as a passer.
Yeah. I think so. The only pick I would say is, like, if Paris Johnson's sitting there, I feel like that's the home run in terms of like what the Bears got to do. But I Khalil Herbert season, it's getting a little out of hand already. And I agree with you there too. Like, he's okay, but I think that when you're looking at like the overall, they got to bring someone in, right? I mean,
yeah.
What are you gonna yell at me, Christian? Go ahead.
No. You're right. But what I was gonna say is, even if they don't go Bijan at pick 9, they do now have a second round pick and the 64th pick, which is essentially a second round pick. There is a non-zero chance that they take a running back with one of those as well. And you can't go into this season with Khalil Herbert, Tristan Ebner, and Travis Homer as your 3 running backs. That's just not going to work, even if you want to get creative with some of your other players. I think Mooney is a schemed up rushing type of guy that can excel in that role. DJ Moore is insanely athletic, and is, someone from Carolina actually suggested that he could be the Debo of Chicago in a new scheme. But you can't roll in with those 3 as your primary backs, even with Justin Fields is going to take a ton of the carries. We know that, but you need to have something a little more reliable. And like Jeff's saying, the pass protection and the pass catching from Khalil Herbert is not adequate enough to feel comfortable.
Could you imagine Gibbs on this team though?
Oh my gosh,
Be fun. Charbonnet just seems like a Chicago Bear, to be honest with you.
That'd be an interesting
like
pick
it
too. Both those guys, like if they can find those in that second round, like I would.
Yep.
That would do very well. Like if they can get Paris Johnson plus one of those guys, Bears would be looking up. DJ Moore, even though everybody seems to think DJ Moore is not good. And then you have all these other groups. Like you that would be a legit offense. With Green Bay's kind of down. The Vikings were, I don't know, frauds last year a little bit. I don't know. Like I think they could compete right there. And then you have the Lions. Like the Bears could be like, oh, wait, we're right here and we're going to compete. And I think that's a big shift, right? All right, let's talk about Vegas. Sign Jimmy G, so we know where that's looking like. I don't think that necessarily means they're out of play for a quarterback. I think that actually maybe could be that if one of these guys falls, they're comfortable draft him and keeping him, like Richardson maybe being there or whatever. What do we think Vegas is going to do, Jeff? And then like overall, so I had this question today. I'm getting a lot of questions from people that think I know what I'm talking about. They're like, hey, are 4 quarterbacks going to go really in the top 10? And I was like, I don't know. I think the most likely scenario is Levis falls out of the top 10. But they probably, I guess, was my answer. Like, yeah, they should probably go in the top 10. I know it's kind of unprecedented. What do you think, Jeff?
They were the team. They were one of the teams that were rumored to be right there with Carolina fighting for that number 1 pick. And that number 3 pick is sitting wide open. And I do think it's interesting, as much as I've thought the entire time of almost inking Bryce Young to Houston in, as that just feels like it's going to be the pick. I think it's important for people to recognize that Bryce Young doesn't need to be quarterback 3 on anybody's board to be the 3rd quarterback selected, because if CJ Stroud is quarterback 1 on somebody's board and Anthony Richardson is quarterback 1 on somebody else's board, Bryce Young could be quarterback 2 on every board, but still be quarterback 3 and still slip right now. And I think that you still have the potential. The number 3 pick is sitting there. I can't imagine Arizona is going to go with the quarterback. Indianapolis is at number 4. If they're really in on a quarterback, I'm sure that they would love to just flip flop and move up there. But Arizona has to know the value of that pick and has to see the tiering with quarterbacks. And so they see the package that the Bears got. And so if they're going to move back, and especially if they're going to move back significantly, they're going to want to be looking to match that package at some level. 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a legitimate starting NFL wide receiver. I would have to think Arizona is weighing that in their mind on moving back on number 3. So the idea that Indy can just give them here's a 3rd round pick to let us move up to number 3, I don't think that that's in play. And it does seem like Indianapolis is willing to be a little bit more patient. Maybe some of that plays into what we've seen with Will Levis being their selection there, without those rumors were early. And so I don't know, there's a lot of derbying that sets up here. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is Josh McDaniels worried about Josh McDaniels' job and bringing somebody incompetent to play the position. And I don't know that I would rule out them going in that direction. But again, it's, as much as the Raiders are known to wheel and deal and be a little bit risky with their selections, it's is their guy going to be there at 3, and is it going to be worth them to go get him?
Yeah, I don't know. I know that's a cop out to this answer, but to this question, but I simply don't know. The Jimmy Garoppolo deal does not deter them from doing something like that. I also don't know why Jimmy Garoppolo would sign a contract if now maybe they were just not up front with him, but he just went through this where a team moved up to the number 3 overall pick to get a guy that was developmental, but that he would have some time as the starter, but then have to fend for his job and fight for, keeping that starting job. And I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo feels that he should be on the bench. I think Jimmy Garoppolo thinks he is a very good quarterback, and that's great. You need to have that confidence as an NFL quarterback. On the other side of things, you have to be realistic and understand what quarterbacks are winning Super Bowls. That said, I don't think, we had been mocking like quarterback to Detroit at times and, Seattle, and then Seattle brought back Geno. And I think there are very specific scenarios in which those 2 teams might go up or stay put and take one of those guys. I'm not seeing it as much, and I don't really think that that's going to happen. So if Will Levis is there at their pick in the top 10, I think that's a situation where, yeah, they'll take a shot on Will Levis and him and Jimmy G can fight for the job. Outside of that, though, I can't see this team moving up because on a resources standpoint, they don't have a ton, and they clearly are strapped for cash. They couldn't fire their coach because they couldn't pay another one. And so they're not getting super aggressive in free agency. They're putting pieces together. They they traded Waller and cut that cap out of their situation. But I don't know. I don't really know what this team is doing, and I don't know if they know what they're doing. And I think that's the problem here. That's
the biggest thing I was going to say. They're in purgatory. They want to win, and McDaniels needs to show that he can be a winner. And he has not looked good as a head coach the last few years, or like his last couple stints that he's had. So I know he wants to go out there and win. When I look at the board, like they could realistically, like I feel like if they really want to win, they need to fix their offensive line. And if you're sitting there and Paris Johnson's still there, like we just mentioned for the Bears, Paris Johnson played guard, remember? Right guard. And then he moved over to left tackle and did that. I think that coaching staff might be like, we could take Paris Johnson. He could fix a lot of our holes, like something there. We believe in Jimmy. We brought Jacobs back. We have Devontae. That could win 9 games. And then we get in the playoffs that saves our job. Like, I think that's where you realistically could look at this pick. And also the Raiders are the one team that's an outlier for like maybe Jalen Carter if he falls. Like if he keeps falling and like people like, and hey, I'll just put him there. And like, what does that look like? Like we've known the Raiders, they don't care about off-field stuff. Historically, and maybe they do now, but they don't. And so like when you're looking at this, how that looks, but then I go back and think maybe if one of these quarterbacks falls and they're sitting there and they're like, hey, we could just stash them and then have them. I just don't know if they have the backing by ownership to do that. I think you really need to have like a plan, and they don't have a plan. So like, I think they take the best player available that helps them win this year. That's not going to be probably Anthony Richardson or Will Levis who's there, or Bryce. Jeff's on the I hate Bryce train right now. So like, if you have that, like, I don't think those guys officially help these guys win. And I think the Jimmy G move was desperate. I think that was a desperate attempt to save their jobs. And I think that's the tough. But so if you had to pick any of these quarterbacks to fall out of the top 10, who would it be then, Jeff? Levis?
Well, I think it's safely Will Levis. I don't know.
I just didn't know. You just hate Bryce. So I didn't know if you wanted to go with a hot take with Bryce outside the top 10.
No.
I would rank him third though.
Okay,
So
that's fine.
I think Levis, the buzz around Levis being the first quarterback off the board is, I mean, Anthony Richardson put a dagger in that. And CJ Stroud honestly put a dagger in that too, both at the combine. Granted, the stuff that we hear earlier in the year is oftentimes what happens in the draft. And so right now is a lot of the hype and the overhype. And so maybe Levis does go a little earlier than, because I do think that he's the guy that could start to fall. And he started to in the last mock I did. But it's just some team's going to go up and get him. So I still think they're going top 10.
Okay. That's fair. All right, let's go over to Houston. Sign Robert Woods, Noah Brown, traded for Shaq Mason. So obviously quarterback at 2, even though they've been throwing some nonsense out there on the streets of the disinformation train saying they're not going to go quarterback. I have a hard time seeing they don't go there. What do they do at 12? I mean, everybody kind of mocks JSN there. I mean, that's pretty much been like the mock forever in terms of wide receiver. Are they comfortable? Brandon Cook's going to stay? Like, Nico has a cult follower. Why does Nico Collins have a cult follower, y'all? Like, that is the one thing. Like, they think Nico's like this guy, especially in fantasy. I don't know what it is, but like, I still see people doing it. Mechie's there, but we don't know what's going on with his health. We're hoping that he comes back, and I think he can be a productive slot. Do you think wide receivers ought to play Jeff at 12, or do you think they could still go there?
I think they'll address the defense, to be honest with you. Bringing Demeco Ryans in, I think that they would love to add defensive line is probably where that I would go at 12. Nico? So unpacking there, a lot to unpack here. So a little bit behind baseball. Nico Collins is like, everybody loves him. The reason why people love him is because they use 3rd and 4th round picks on him in their dynasty league, and they've had him stashed for a couple of years, and he's shown just a little bit. And so when you see these random guys that have these hives on Twitter, the reality of it is people probably went together, use 3rd round picks or 4th round picks on guys, and they're just desperately hoping that something happens. I got people that they're hoping that Tyler Beatty is involved in Denver's running back system because they used a 4th round pick on him and they're sitting on him last year. And so a lot of what gets driven up in those types of things throughout analyst Twitter is those types of people that are holding those lottery tickets and are hoping that they can cash them in. I think Nico Collins is a pretty limited player, and I think we've kind of seen what he's going to be. What I think is interesting on what they have done in free agency is adding Robert Woods and Noah Brown. And when I look at those two players, like, those are not dynamic receivers, but what those two players are, those are run blocking receivers, and they are able to participate in the run game. And so adding them and Shaq Mason, my mind starts to wonder if Anthony Richardson, putting him out there with some wide receivers who can run block and play with some physicality, that kind of feels like maybe that's their plan. If that's what the direction that they're going, the players that they're looking to target, build up that offensive line, add these receivers that can run block outside. Let's bring Richardson in there. We can play a power run game with Dameon Pierce, Anthony Richardson. We're uniting them from the Florida backfield. And that's where my mind has been over the last, once I've started to see these signings come in, because they're not ideally guys that you would want to add, I think, for Bryce Young, maybe, but it's just, I think they're very nice pieces for Anthony Richardson. And so how the offense would flow and complement together. I think they want to play a certain brand of physical football. I think DeMeco Ryans wants to bring that in, and the way that physicality was a staple of San Francisco's wide receivers with Juwan Johnson, with Deebo Samuel, obviously. I think there's some of that in play there, but I think they're going to want to set a tone on offense, and they're going to want to run the ball, and that leads me to think that maybe Anthony Richardson might be the guy that they're targeting at number 2.
I like that. Nothing they've done signals that they like, or they want receivers that Bryce Young has played with, right? So Bryce Young excels with speed guys that can stretch vertically. I think Nico Collins can sometimes do that. He's got speed for a big guy, but that's not what they've gone out and acquired this year. And I do think the Shaq Mason acquisition is important, although they do have ties to Shaq Mason. They were in New England when or he was in New England when that front office was as well. On the other side of things, my mind started to wander after these signings, and, we talk about Dameon Pierce and how good he was last year. I have not yet ruled out Bijan Robinson to the Texans at 12. I simply haven't, because if there is a front office mindset that wouldn't care about something like that, it would be one that came from New England. And just getting football players. And that's what Bijan Robinson is. And I don't know if he's there at 12, but I wouldn't rule that out. I would, going back to the original question, I don't think they're taking a receiver. I think this is a good spot for Jalen Carter as well. I think Jalen Carter's going to fall, guys. Today, his pro day was not good today, which we haven't touched on. Just not good things coming out of the Jalen Carter camp right now. So maybe this is even too early for him, and maybe they trade back and get some more assets, because I do think that this team is uniquely positioned. If they get the quarterback right and they start to have a solid defense, they are on that upward trend in that division, and they can go kind of compete for at least a playoff spot and a division title. But what they do with those 2 picks is so essential. And honestly, Bijan might be the best pick, and Dameon Pierce, dynasty managers would not be happy with that. And, I don't think that's the best use. I think Dameon Pierce is very talented, but you never know.
It just comes back to, what Ryan's going to do, but also the offensive coordinator, Bobby Slolik, he came from the system of the Niners as well. He's been with basically Shanahan his entire career. And what does Shanahan do with that offense and with the rushing attack? And now that's the only thing with Bijan, like they could, but will they go the route of like, we're just going to plug whoever and go? Or are they going to look at what they did with CMC and say, okay, we need a dude, because over time they did that. So if they do that, we go Bijan. JSN doesn't fit that package of what the Niners did. And what Shanahan want and like what those guys do. So like, that's the profile, right? Like that when you're looking at wide receivers, that's, I think, the biggest thing when I look at their area. It doesn't fit what they want. They're not those type of wide receivers that they're looking for. There're not a lot of wide receivers in this class that looks like that. What, Jeff? What are you going to say?
Well, I mean, our rookie guide comp for Jackson Smith-Njigba is Brandon Ayuk. So I'm just saying.
Yeah. So I think the Ayuk mold, I think you can find an Ayuk mold, but the Deebo mold is the one that I think you attach to the 49ers personally. But I do like that comp.
But I mean, I like the comp, but they already have Ayuk. I felt like that's why I was mad. Like with Robert Woods and those guys, they're already like, even if they keep Brandon Cooks, I mean, whatever's going on there, like, I don't know. It's weird. I don't know if JSN fits anymore. They might go and wing it, go there, but I don't know how high some of these wide receivers are going to be on people's big boards either. Like, we're already talking about the wide receiver class not being that, so maybe they're just not high enough on these guys to take them at that position. And they decide to go the other route. I do still think they go maybe defense. I'm leaning defense as well, but Bijan would be a lot of fun. That'd be a
free agency gave you a preview of what you're going to see on night one in the NFL drafts. Free agency day one, off-ball linebackers flew off the board because there's not depth in the NFL draft. But what you're going to see in the NFL draft, you're going to see edge rushers, you're going to see corners, you're going to see all the non-sexy picks. And then you're going to be waiting a little while, I think, to maybe you see Smith and Jigba go off the board, but I think you're going to be waiting maybe into the 20s to see the first receiver go. Bijan Robinson, I think, is in play. We've already discussed it as early as 9 and probably as late as the late 20s. And so I think that, there was a lot of commotion around fantasy social media this week about frustration on day one of free agency being very boring for the fantasy positions. I think that night one in the NFL draft is going to be the same thing because that's just where the value lays right now.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about everybody's favorite running back landing spot all off season. Hey, Devin O'Shane's going to go to Miami. Hey, Zach Charbonnet is going to go to Miami. Hey, what if they get Bijan? Oh, Gibbs will look good. Well, Miami just said we're going to re-sign every single guy that we had on our roster. Jeffrey Wilson, Raheem Mostert, Ahmed, Myles Gaskin. They brought them all back. And they gave up a third for Jalen Ramsey, so they lost that pick there. They're not going running back anymore in this draft. I'd be shocked if they go running back here. So we're rolling out a committee in Miami, right, Jeff? That's what we're doing.
I think they will take a running back, but they're not going to use a high resource on a running back because we see every year Kyle Shanahan takes one or two running backs. And I think that we'll see the same thing out of Miami, that they will add a body, but I don't think anymore that you can circle it and say, well, there's not a single person on their roster, so they're going to go add Bijan because it's just going to be fantastic for fantasy. I think that they'll add a later player, probably maybe a Abanikanda might be a good fit there, or somebody that can bring a little physicality while still having some layer of speed to be able to fit in that wide zone. And I think that you'll see a later pick, maybe a 4th round, 5th round pick, but it still could reap great value, whoever lands there. I just don't think you're going to get the super Jahmyr Gibbs landing spot or something like that early at Miami.
In theory, sure. They only have 4 picks this year. They have a 3rd round pick, or a 2nd round pick, 3rd round pick, 6th round pick, 7th round pick. They would have to go up and get a guy or just be resigned to getting a 6th or 7th round guy. With them signing all of these guys back, I think they're going to turn to priority undrafted free agents to add to the room, which in this deep running back class, I think that they could still find someone and add a body that does make it over maybe 1 or 2 of these guys. I think the main takeaway for me personally is Raheem Mostert showed that he has juice left, a lot of juice left for as old as he is. I think ideally that is going to be the lead dog in this backfield. And I don't see a rookie coming in and taking a ton of that. I think they try to develop that guy for a year. And, Mostert, I think he signed a 2-year deal, but we know what contracts are in the NFL and they're fake and the years don't matter. And the money also doesn't matter sometimes. So, I think next year is kind of the year that maybe Miami looks like a good landing spot, but every year we say that, and every year it's just they're cool. They're cool with Myles Gaskin somehow.
Yeah. Doesn't it feel like we're going to see something after the draft? Evan Hull signs an undrafted free agent contract with Miami.
He's getting drafted now, man. I think he might not. His film doesn't say so, but
he did every drill, though, baby. Every drill he was out there. He is the Twitter love darling. Evan is a worker. Workhorse, brings his lunch pail to the game. All right, we done with Miami? Jeff, I don't know if you have something on your mind.
Well, my only thought is there's still a very, very crowded backfield in San Francisco between having Christian McCaffrey there, having Elijah Mitchell there, having Jordan Mason, a guy that they like there, and then Tyrion Davis-Price, the guy that they use in the 3rd round next year. And I wonder if that might be a situation where whoever falls out of favor, probably Davis-Price. I wonder if that could be a position where, hey, we'll give you him and a 7th, and you give us back a 6th or a 5th, and like, here, we'll ship this direction. And maybe that's the way that Miami gets involved in the running back market.
Yep.
Yeah. Could be. All right, let's go to Philadelphia. Let's talk about our guy. Rashad Penny signs a deal over there to go to Philadelphia. Like we mentioned earlier, Miles Sanders left. They re-signed Boston Scott. Oh, what is going on here with Philadelphia and their roster? Christian, we're going to go to you first. What do you think about that? Like, all right, there's two ways to look at Penny. Either you think Penny's coming into a smash spot with Sanders and he can contribute, be a top 15 guy maybe next year and just really kind of fall into that offense and a great offensive line system, or you think he's a bust because he gets hurt all the time. And I think both are fine. I think both are actually reasonable takes. What do you think here?
I think both are correct. I think that's the misconception here is when he is healthy, he is walking into he's a better running back than Miles Sanders on the ground. I don't think he's a better pass catcher than him, but I think as a pure runner behind that offensive line, Rashad Penny should come close to leading the league in rushing at the very least. But we've never seen it because he can't stay healthy. And so there has to be some type of middle ground here. I don't think, I think his value is going to flesh out. And so people are going to bake in that risk of the injury, but they're also going to bake in the upside. I mean, this could be a top 12 running back in fantasy football next year. That being said, we know it's going to be a committee. Boston Scott's going to be there. Ken Gainwell is there. We know that situation, but we also know that there can be a productive running back from that with Miles Sanders doing it last year. Maybe not a top 12 guy and a super high upside guy, but I also think if you have a guy as good as Penny, you give him a little bit more of the pie. If he gets hurt, that's all out the window, and that's the Rashad Penny experience. But, I'm still willing to put my chips in on that, and I don't think that they add at least a high value running back. I think they do add one more body to the room to kind of compete with those three, but I also think they're confident and comfortable with those three, knowing that Boston Scott and Gainwell can fill in if Penny were to go down. And then we've seen free agent signings in the middle of seasons be fruitful for teams. Deontay Foreman was one. So I don't think that they're sweating the running back position because Philadelphia never sweats the running back position.
Yeah, and that's the important part there on team building, that I think that they will add a later body, but I don't think it's a priority, especially now. I do want to say that I think an important piece of Dynasty team building advice, and I think that as you get towards the end of the season, looking into next year, everybody in Dynasty is looking for that young running back that might ascend to the top of the depth chart if everything breaks right in free agency. Meanwhile, they're casting off all these old veterans, and what you're seeing with Rashad Penny especially is target those old veterans, target those guys that are going to be free agents, especially if those guys have been productive in the past, because you're going to have openings on teams and teams are going to add those players above the hot rookie that you want to break out, the late round guy that you stashed from the fourth round and threw on your taxi squad that you're desperately hoping will break out. Coaches want that proven production and that player that they know what they're going to get. GMs want that guy that they can plug in there and have a good idea what you're going to get. And so instead of targeting those guys every year, it's the same conversation of like, oh, well, get Ty Chandler or get Jerome Ford, whatever it might be. Instead of going those, go way cheaper and get Rashad Penny, and then he lands in a smash spot in Philadelphia, and all of a sudden you've got a productive player that you're putting into your lineup. As the buzz and the heat grows on him, if you see production out of the first couple of weeks, all of a sudden you got Rashad Penny at the end of last season as a throw-in or a forget about in a trade. And if he's leading the NFL and rushing through the first 2 weeks, you've got a massive asset on your hand that you're able to turn around and capitalize. And so buy those distressed assets that are going to be leaving the situation that distressed you, but still showed some production, and take that wild card on him landing in a smash spot like Philadelphia. And you see that for Penny. And I think that that's an important way to play Dynasty.
Okay. I'm going to list this off and I want you guys to guess who it is. This running back finished running back 65, running back 56, 31, 57, and 48 to end the year. And he's getting buzz on the Philadelphia Eagles. Do you know who that is?
Gainwell, probably.
Gainwell?
Why are people talking about Kenneth Gainwell still as like viable? But like that's just a disservice, I think, because Gainwell, even Boston Scott probably will be more fantasy relevant than Kenneth Gainwell, I think, like in different spots, right? And even if Penny goes down, they're going to lean on other. I don't think Gainwell has a serviceable role where you can rely on him, right? Like and you're right. He did get picked in the second round, huh? That's what it is. And then people just have valued him at that point, at some point, because I don't see the Gainwell. I don't understand the Gainwell. His highest finish was 17. And the only reason why he had that is because he scored a phantom touchdown with 4 carries. And that was last year. Like, I don't know what we're doing. And that's in PPR, guys. Like, that's not like because everybody will say he's a PPR sleeper. And no, he's not. He's not a PPR sleeper. Like, I don't know. I don't get the Gainwell thing. Maybe people are smarter than me, but I just don't understand the Gainwell thing.
Well, and until the quarterback push is legislated out of the game, Jalen Hurts is the goal line running back for this team and the short yardage running back for this team. So,
yeah. All right, let's go to New England. They did the best thing that they could done for the Dynasty community. They got Juju in free agency. So 3-year, $33 million. So that means maybe they don't draft a wide receiver and hurt everybody's takes there. And then they also just got James Robinson for $8 million guaranteed, running back out of there. So Christian's running back one stuff still alive. What do we think about New England? What's going on there, Jeff? And also Juju's better than Jacoby Myers, right?
Apparently that's the talk. I don't know. I don't know. I think they're pretty close to equal. I think they both serve a very similar role, and I think that you're kind of splitting hairs deciding that one is clearly better than the other because I think they're both complementary receivers. But I do think
whoa. That's not how this works. We have to pick a side and we have to yell really loud. Like, this is what happens here in Twitter and fantasy. What are we talking about?
I don't know.
Juju or Jacoby? Tell me now.
Or so,
Come on. Juju. No, I get it. No, go ahead. Sorry, Jeff.
No, I think that I really like Juju Smith-Schuster landing with New England, but the thing to look at them now is as you look at that receiver room now, they've got Juju Smith-Schuster to play the slot. They have Kendrick Bourne if they still like him. I don't know what happened there last year. He seemed like the breakout player out of 2021, and then he was in the doghouse for all of last year. They still have Devontae Parker to play that X, and then they have Tyquan Thornton to step up, and they used an early pick on him last year to be that vertical field stretcher. So as you look at that kind of that roster, I just don't know if I see the value on them going wide receiver in round one, and I think that a lot of people had inked that in as a pick in mock drafts as they're surely going to take a wide receiver. It's whatever happens with Jacoby Myers, and it's interesting because I wonder – if that offer was made to Myers, because it didn't seem like it was. It didn't seem like that money was there because Juju Smith, it was one last year, but Juju Smith-Schuster signed for the same dollar amount as Jacoby Myers, and Jacoby Myers kind of seemed like his feelings were hurt on that situation. So I think that that's something to consider, and that maybe that's something to look at how Bill Belichick values Smith-Schuster relatively to how he valued Jacoby Myers if they weren't in that similar offers weren't made.
Yeah, I just want to take an opportunity to talk about offensive linemen actually, because they signed Riley Reif today too, which I think is important. I think the Patriots offensive line on the tackle front was really bad, and Riley Reif was a bad player for the Chicago Bears last year. Bad, terrible. He's currently slotted to start. I think that wide receiver round one stuff was definitely more in the fantasy community because I don't think that there was, I think I did it too. So I'm guilty of it. I'm not blaming anyone for it. It's just, I think when you take a step back and look at that roster, you see a 30-year-old Trent Brown still manning that left tackle spot. And he was bad last year too. I just think they have to go trench, whether it's on the defensive side of the ball, because I think they have holes there too. I think that wide receiver round one stuff is not properly projecting how they value Tyquan Thornton either, because they spent a second round pick on him last year, and I think they like him. They got him involved. Obviously, it was a down year for New England, and the quarterback situation wasn't exactly what they thought. And I don't think Tyquan Thornton's injury in the beginning of the season helped his case any. But I do think that they see him as a key piece to the offense as he stretches the field vertically. Getting Juju, they have a target guy like Jacoby Myers, and I assume that they valued them very similarly, or maybe they like Juju better and they got him at the same exact money that Jacoby got. So that's a positive thing for them. I think they feel comfortable with their skill positions, and I don't know if we even see them take a wide receiver in the first few rounds because of that. So,
is this the worst offense in the NFL next year?
Yeah, probably.
Arizona.
Okay.
Yeah, that
because their
quarterback
tore their ACL. That's why they're going to be the worst offense in the NFL. I think the Pats may have a top 5 worst offense in the NFL. Like, I think it's pretty.
Yeah.
But Kevin's guy, Pierre Strong, I think he's a winner. If James Robinson is the piece that they're adding to that backfield, I think that Pierre Strong is a winner coming out of the free agency and the draft, because they still have Kevin Harris is at depth there. If they're adding James Robinson to be the backup to Ramondre Stevenson, I do think that role is there for Strong to take as that pass catching back. And we've seen and that's another team that has used running backs in a very role specific area. And Pierre Strong is lingering out there as a potential target to pick up.
All right. Yeah. Hey, thank you for giving me a shout out, buddy. It's always nice when you and me are friends on the show. All right, let's go. One last thing real quick. Tight end market's pretty frozen right now. Everybody out there. Schultz hasn't signed. I think he's meeting with the Chargers. I don't know what that's going to look like. Really quick, Peyton Hendershot. Go take a shot on him. I like Peyton. The Cowboys like Peyton Hendershot.
A Hender shot on him. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think everybody has that. Jake Ferguson is that Dallas tight end to target, but I think Hendershot's that more of a pass catching back there, or pass catching tight end option there.
Yep. Go take Hendershot. Go give it. Go take a Hender shot. All right. Anyway, so draft is deep. So we're going to see a lot of tight ends, I think, in this class, and the tight end's going to get bumped up. We've been talking about this for a long time. I think, when I wrote my article in December, I talked about how deep this tight end class consensus has come around. Jeff, best guess. Who's the first tight end off the board?
Best guess, first tight end off the board. Well, I was all on Dalton Kincaid. He just had a terrible combine relative to where the other guys are. And I think Darnell Washington's going to end up being the first tight end off the board. I think physically he brings things that the other players do not. I think that you can see him as that sixth offensive lineman, that guy that can work up in the seam. And so I think that he'll end up being that first player off the board just because the physical traits are so much. And I think that what you're going to see, I've been speculating that you're going to see a lot more physicality return to NFL offenses because defenses have gotten more of that base nickel look, more of players that can play in space. And I think the offenses are going to shift, and they saw Philadelphia get to the Super Bowl largely off of a physical run game and the ability to take chunks down the field, and because they could protect their quarterback. And I think that that's what you're going to see kind of NFL offenses want to moving more in that direction. They're going to want to dictate physicality onto the defenses, and Washington's going to be that type of player. I don't know if I love him for fantasy. I think it's a wild card, but I do think that it's just how free agency and the draft works in concert, where you're not seeing movement in the tight ends as much as we wanted Dalton Schultz to land somewhere fun or Mike Gesicki to land somewhere fun. And surely they're going to get paid. Well, teams are seeing, would you rather have Luke Musgrave in the second round, or would you rather give $50 million to Mike Gesicki? And, I think that's probably a pretty easy decision at this point. And so it's important to realize the way that the draft and free agency works, that often positions that get big contracts in free agency are the positions that you're not going to see in the draft early or depth throughout the draft. And meanwhile, everybody's talking about the depth of this tight end class. And so if you can get a cost controlled asset for 4 or 5 years of development in there versus taking a shot on a tight end that maybe or maybe not fits your system. And so that's why you haven't seen a lot of movement out of that position.
Yeah, I just talked about how New England really needs trench play, but I also wouldn't rule out Darnell Washington to them because he does offer that that next level of blocking. He's a sixth offensive lineman out there, and that's an important piece that NFL teams are going to value. He's an athletic freak. We know that now. Officially know that. We kind of knew that before. But I think that that's a place where maybe he does end up fantasy relevant because they do like to feature their tight ends a bit. And we just talked about how they're skill position players. They are comfortable with them, but they might not be the best. So I also wouldn't rule out Mayer being the first one. Simply, he's the best one. I think we've all evaluated it like that. Maybe not the best pass catching one, but definitely the best all around guy that can maybe offer a little bit of both of those things. And he tested better than I think even I projected. I didn't expect he was above an 8 relative athletic score, which is pretty good. So I wouldn't be shocked because we've been on him as the tight end one for 3 years now, in Devy circles and college football circles. So maybe the NFL's smart. Maybe they take Mayer first.
Yeah. As soon as he ran a 4.7, it pretty much solidified everything for me. Like, I feel like he's tied in one. Like, once he hit that number, because I thought it could be a little higher. I would be shocked, though, if Darnell Washington wasn't on like 20 teams number one big board, like as the tight end position, just because what you guys both talked about. He's the freaking best blocking tight end in this class. Like, he offers that. So 12 personnel, you're going to see those type of schemes. Like, the team's going to fall for that. All right. I think we did well there, boys. So that's the free agency talk. Getting into kind of where the draft's going and kind of knowing where these landing spots are drying up. There's still a lot of running backs available. Who's the best wide receiver available still right now?
Paris Campbell.
Hey, yes, our guy Paris Campbell's out there. Adam Thielen, he went to Carolina on a visit, so we're seeing there. Like, so wide receivers again. There's got to be some trades coming because I don't see them teams fall in love with a lot of these guys in the draft. But we'll keep you up to date on that. We appreciate you guys. We got a lot of people watching. Could you hit that like button for us so our boss knows you like our show? That would be great. So before we get into the games right now, hit that like button. Don't leave right now. Okay, we're gonna have some fun talking XFL. You want to stay for that. But hit that like button if you decide you want to go. So we get that algorithm up there, and we're gonna try to get something given away at some point on this show too. But we're gonna have to. Jeff's the pocketbook guy, so we got to get Jeff to open his pocketbook, and then we will go there. So all right, let's get into the games. Christian wants to run us through it.
Yep. So the Sportsbook Rundown is the first game. This is the Jeff and Kevin special game. They won. They split the chip. I picked different on the last one last week because I said, I don't want us all to pick the same ones, but I know I'm going to lose because of it. And then I lost because of it. So here we are. We're going to pick 4 XFL games this weekend. First one, Orlando versus Vegas. Kevin, where are you going?
Never pick Orlando, so I'm going Vegas.
Vegas, baby.
Yeah. Same. Vegas. DC against St. Louis. Yep.
Fighting AJ McCarron's St. Louis.
Yep. I'm just going to say you still have to give me the team. I'm going to go DC with this one. Kevin?
Didn't they just play? I felt like they just played.
No.
Yeah.
There's only 8 teams.
Okay, that's true. Maybe they roll it back. Maybe it's one of those things where they roll it back. I'm a DC fan. I'm gonna go DC.
All right. Houston versus Seattle. I'm first. Seattle. Kevin.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go Seattle as well.
Houston.
All right. Last one, San Antonio against Arlington. Kevin, you're first.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. Arlington. I'll take Arlington.
Yeah.
San Antonio.
San Antonio. Sure. Sounds good. That'll do it for the Jeff and Kevin Sportsbook Rundown.
I should have been betting these this whole time and just retired. Like, I wouldn't even have to do this anymore. All right, let's dive over to prospect poker. So we're gonna play poker. While we do that, we're gonna give you some over unders from this week, and we're gonna go into the XFL. So we have some sports lines on there, and we'll kind of dive into that and go over there. So over, Christian's gonna give us his first over, and what do you got, Christian?
Josh Gordon over 55.5 receiving yards. I think Josh Gordon is still good at football, and they throw a lot in the XFL.
All right. So we have a 4 of clubs, we have a 9 of clubs, and we have a 7 of hearts showing. Christian has an ace of, a queen of spades. And my choice is going to be Deontay Burnett over 45.5 receiving yards. And really, I'm just picked him because the other 2 guys got there first, and there were not that many options on the board. So I had to pick somebody. So I've got a 6 of clubs.
Everybody can tell tax season's taking a rough
Yes.
time.
I am at that point.
Doesn't know what queen is. We're really struggling here. I'm so glad he made it through the first 45 minutes of this show, or 50 minutes. All right, I'm gonna take the fighting Ben DiNucci's, baby. Give me Ben DiNucci over 240. Don't let me down, DiNucci.
All right, we got a 4 of diamonds for Kevin.
Okay.
No.
My under this week is Max Borghi under 37.5 rushing yards. If you don't know who Max Borghi is, he is formerly the next Christian McCaffrey. But he had 27 yards in his last game. So we're going to go with under again for him.
So the predecessor to Evan Hall. All right. So I've got a 5. Christian has an 8 of diamonds showing. I've got a 5 of diamonds on my pick. I've got John Trey Kirkland under 58.5 receiving yards. Up to Kevin.
I'm going to take under Morgan Ellison, 45.5 rushing yards. They just don't run the ball enough. So that's actually a pretty good bet.
Ooh, a 5 of spades. So Kevin wins because he had a pair of 4s. So
Right.
very, very exciting game. So the last game that we play 3 games here, and we play blackjack. We play trivia with blackjack. We get a trivia question. You get it right, you get a good outcome. You get it wrong, you get a bad outcome. So Christian's going to lead us off, and Christian has a 14 showing. Kevin is going to have
Here we go.
an
Here we go, baby.
an 8. So 19 showing for Kevin, and I have a 13 showing. So we need some trivia questions here.
All right. Kevin, do you have one you want me to ask?
I got one. It's XFL related, Jeff. You excited for this?
Yes.
Who okay, so this guy is leading his team in receiving. He's a former USC wide receiver that went undrafted 2 years ago in the NFL draft. Do you know who that is?
Keith Ellison.
No. Tyler Vaughns. Do you remember Tyler Vaughns?
Yeah, I do. Pittsburgh Steeler.
Yeah.
I think. All right.
I don't know if he was or not. I'm just going with
He was in camp with the Steelers. I did their team write-up last year. So
look at you. You knew that.
All right. I have a question for you, Jeff, because you didn't bust yet. Mine is not football related. What year was Kodak founded?
1938.
No, a little lower. I'll give you another guess, though. This was a hard one.
1921.
No, 1892. It was a lot lower. I didn't want to give you the answer. Right
The last time the Bills won the Super Bowl.
Man.
Apparently, I busted. I don't know. I didn't bust. I don't know.
Sure. I would like a question.
All right, Christian. Who is leading the XFL in passing touchdowns?
Ben DiNucci.
Brandon Silvers from Houston.
Love it.
Ooh, and you just busted. What that means, Kevin wins the show, and we need to get out of here, or else Cecil's gonna yell at us.
Sorry. How long should I have this FaceTime? All right. I want to shout out. It's Ted Lasso week. So Ted Lasso, definitely one of the greatest shows on television. And I want to take a moment to talk about kind of like just the part of the show, what it is like in terms of like how you should treat people. And I think that we need to do a better job of how we treat people in society as a whole, and just each other, just having empathy with each other. And he talks about that, just like, the biggest thing is be curious, not judgmental. And I think at times content creators and people and just in general, we're very judgmental. And I'm part of that problem too at times. And I think it would be nice if we could find a ground where we can all just understand that this is a crazy life. And if we just were better, we had more empathy for each other and just truly try to get to know each other and just understand that we all come from different backgrounds. It's okay to have different opinions, but to do it in a positive way and to just try to learn from. And that's my favorite thing, is learning from people that I maybe disagree with, but don't burn those bridges and just be better human beings. That's my message here. Go watch Ted Lasso, because it's definitely one of those life lesson type of shows, but just be better people and just let's practice empathy with each other.
Season 3 of Ted Lasso, fantastic. Yep.
Yeah, that's coming on. So we'll be back next week, March 22nd at 9 p.m. Eastern. Until then, I'm Kevin Coleman.
I'm Jeff Bell.
And I'm Christian Williams, and you just watched the Football Guys College Football Show.